Now that we've completed our discussion of sense-based abilities, as well as that of feeling and knowledge-based abilities, we can enter into the third and final classification of this type of talent. That, of course, being mind-based or manipulation-based abilities. The reason that we combine these two together is because in most cases, the assumption is that we're using our mind to make them happen. Doesn't mean that we are, though. We could be using other things or manipulating specific things to create a domino effect that the end result is the manipulation of whatever we're trying to manipulate. The reality is none of that really matters. What's important is what we do, the end result. How it works, as I said, with many other things, we can define later once we have better understanding and experience. So to begin, there are two subclasses of kinetic or movement-based abilities. Now, what this means is simply alteration or movement of a specific type of thing. Now, in this, we have the elemental kinetic, which is the ability to manipulate the four basic elements: earth, air, fire, and water. Now, some of these abilities can blend. As an example, if you're using fire to warm water, the two are blending. If you were using heat to melt metal, same thing, there's a blending. So some of it does get overlapped, but we're going to deal with each one independently and you'll get an idea of what they are. So to begin, let's deal with the one that is most known, that of fire manipulation, the pyrokinetic. Now, this is a skill that if you are going to play with, remember to start small. Don't jump too far ahead. Fire can be dangerous. So if you're going to use it, as with anything involving flame, keep a fire extinguisher handy, just in case. Let's not be careless. So to manipulate fire, the best way to start is actually with something like a candle or a campfire. Now, the best way to work is, in my opinion, with the candle because it's simple, it's easier to contain, and it's much smaller. Now, to develop the talent, the best thing to do is to concentrate on the flame and make it change. Make it grow a little bit, make it shrink a little bit, make it change color. These are perfect things that can be done to manipulate fire. Others could be to snuff out the candle. But again, there's a crossover with air, because if you remove the air, you'll do the same thing. But it's all interconnected. So that's the basics of pyrokinetic, just manipulating fire, flame, heat. And again, use your imagination, but try and be careful. If you have a penny in your hand and you're trying to melt it, well, you might cause a lot of damage to your hand from molten metal if you succeed. So take some precautions. The next one, of course, we'll deal with water, what we call the aqua kinetic. Now, the easiest way to play with this ability is to deal with a glass of water and try and make it do different things. Now, again, heating it or cooling it does overlap with other talents, but it's not bad to practice. Try making it ice cold. Try making it warm. Don't go for boiling, just go for well above room temperature so that you can see that it's hot. Now, if you're holding a glass in your hand, of course, the thing inside is going to heat up to your body temperature, so go for above that. But the other thing would be to manipulate it more directly, to make water change form. So if it's in a glass, you could make it become thinner and taller so that it actually isn't touching the sides of the glass. You could make it kind of turn into different shapes, like maybe the head of a snake or something. That's an aquakinetic. The next one we'll deal with is air, what we call an aerokinetic. Now, the easiest way to develop these talents would be to play with air. As an example, if there's wind blowing, try and make it stop. If there's no wind blowing, try and make the wind blow. That would be a perfect thing to do. Now, as said earlier, you could also try and snuff out flames by making the air disappear. You could also try and make flames grow by making oxygen more readily available to flames. Those are all aerokinetic abilities. The last one, of course, is that of ground, earth manipulation, what we call a terrakinetic. Now, this one's a little more in-depth because it includes anything associated with earth, which would include plants, as an example. So the easiest way to develop a terrakinetic ability would be to look at, say, like a flat surface of earth and make it change. Now, telekinetic ability, which we'll get into a second, is kind of an overlap here too, but again, trying to give you all the details. So that would be one option. Another would be to play with plants themselves, to try and make them grow better, to make them spontaneously grow. Now, again, there's a lot of overlap with some other abilities that we're going to get into in a second, so the end result is what matters more than the title. So those are the basic 4 elements. The next we'll get into is the other group of kinetic abilities, which is direct kinetic. Now, we call them direct because they manipulate something directly. Now, the first of those will deal with the most known, that of the telekinetic. Now, what this means is someone who effectively manipulates any object with their mind. So it's different from the elementals because you're dealing with more defined other things. As example, if I wanted to develop the skill, I could put a penny on a table and try and make it move. I could lift up anything around me, pieces of paper, feathers. I can make things shift. All that kind of thing. Most of what we've seen in movies, right? Making things raise, making them move. That's really the best way to develop a telekinetic ability. Now, the next one we'll deal with is a little more in-depth, and it's a little more modern. And it's called the technokinetic, which is the ability to manipulate technology. Now, if I wanted to turn on a TV that had a pull knob and I pull the knob, that's telekinetic. If I have a remote control and I can manipulate those abilities without touching the remote, without any of the buttons being depressed, that's what a technokinetic is. So it covers the gambit from, say, altering radio stations to increasing volume, and even more impressively, say, to typing on a keyboard without ever touching it, to downloading knowledge into a computer, for example. That's why it gets more in depth. So to develop a technokinetic ability, the easiest way is to start with simple things. Maybe a calculator, make the numbers appear without depressing the buttons, to alter the volume on a TV to turn it on or off, those kind of things. That's the easiest and best ways to do those. The next is an enokinetic, which is someone that deals with energy. Now, that's more kind of the stuff we see in a lot of the sci-fi fantasy movies. And in prime best use would be to, say, create a shield of energy around us that deflects harmful things or whatever. But that's the greatest, kind of the bigger side of this. Now, an enokinetic would also include a lot of other abilities, like healing, for example, where you're manipulating energy for a specific defined purpose. Now, my opinion, the best way to develop that skill would actually be to play with some energetic techniques that I'll have in other clips, or to even develop healing talent. The two kind of go hand in hand because they're being used interchangeably, kind of thing. So those are the basic kinetic abilities. Now, the last one we'll talk about is definitely mind-based, which is that of the telepath. Now, telepathy, most people associate with the ability to read minds. Well, telepathy actually has 2 different groups, the ability to read as well as the ability to transmit. If I was talking to someone that was telepathic and I was telepathic, we could theoretically have an entire conversation without saying a word. That's what telepathy truly is, that ability for two-way communication. If you can pick up the thoughts, that is a telepathic trait, and if you can transmit your thoughts, that's also a telepathic trait. So the 3 all kind of go together. So the best way to develop that particular talent is actually to find someone else to play with, to have them sit across from you and try different things. Try and project colors or numbers or symbols or pictures into their mind, whatever you like, or try and pick up things from them, and vice versa. That's the best way to develop telepathy, is just to interact with other people and to continually work and try different things. As with all the other talents, it works in different ways, so try different things. Try smells, try tastes, try thoughts, the whole gambit, because you don't know what's going to get through and what isn't. So those are the basic mind-based and manipulation-based abilities. There wasn't a lot of detail because they're relatively simple to use. They might be more complicated to understand, but to develop and use them and grow with them is relatively simple. Just manipulate the things around you. Using your hand, you can extend it and make it move, your mind, whatever works. They're tools to an end. The end result is what matters, not how you got there. So that's it for this topic, and I will see you in the next section where we will now begin an entirely new series of discussions.